Revolt. I have explained in detail why and against what. Frankly, the latest news being Preacher Doc is strongly suggesting that Obama, not being born in the U.S., is an illegal president, and that the House of Representatives should take impeachment proceedings, investigate, and determine if he really was born in the U.S., and therefore, if not, he is an illegal president and must be thrown out as representing legally the U.S. Now, this video, I always say you got to be at least 21, is being brought by d.b.a. PhD Company, which is in my semi-retirement of the discipline of science, particularly mathematical physics, and most precisely advanced concepts in theoretical mathematical physics. Now, I am speaking to the average American person. I need what's called a court of last resort for them to rise and revolt against what is, I have defined Hoover and Hoovers, their revolting quagmire they have of the U.S. versus the laws of God, man, Constitution, Bill of Rights, civil rights. Now, I want to present my last lecture, which I gave at the American Physical Society, which I was a member, at the place I consider sort of close to me for various reasons and projects, University of California, Lawrence Laboratory, in which they do linear accelerations. They might be the only one in the world that they do it through just linear accelerations. And I filmed it, and I think I have photos and I can prove and so forth. And the title was The Three Eras of Physics, of Mathematical Physics. And the first one, I put it on the screen and so forth. The first one is the Galilean. Now, Galileo is considered and is the father of modern science. And he said that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And that if you gauge the real fall of objects, unless it's like a feather that's suspended by air currents, that they all fall at the same rate of speed, the same acceleration. And he had figured out that the acceleration is due to its force divided by its mass if you pushed it, that the force equals mass times acceleration, and that it would continue by oil and inclined planes. As you got less friction, it would continue. So he, of course, figured out, he was a clear thinker, and he figured out that therefore his law of inertia, and that is a body in motion will remain in motion unless acted upon by an exterior force. And then through acceleration of gravity, he figured that the distance it fell was equal to 1/2 the force of gravity times t squared. In other words, it's as the time, you square the time because it falls and then falls that distance in the next second, plus the distance it's going to fall due to gravity. So it comes out to where it's d equals 1/2 gt squared. So if he dropped a stone in a well and timed it, he could obtain the distance by the force of gravity in the English system of 32 feet per second. You see. Or you can do it in meters, of course. Now, most of great importance was that he put forth a law that's definitely by me and called, and I was taught, so forth, the universal law of the addition or subtraction of component velocities. So it's the universal law of the addition or subtraction of component velocities, in that if you take and push something in the x direction, so he's an observer and it's going in the x direction, and let's say it's a sailboat, because he worked with boats on rivers and oceans, but or even a cannon. He worked figuring cannon, the trajectory, and the time and the speed. He actually calculated the speed of sound. Okay. Now, if it's in, like, if there's a boat going from 0 in the x direction, and the medium, the river, is going in that direction, its velocity will be by the addition of the component velocities. You see, it will be, of course, the velocity of the boat and the velocity of the current moving the boat. If it's a boat going from left in the x direction and the current is going in the y direction, then it would be the velocity of the boat minus the velocity of the current of the medium. So he put forward the Galilean transformation equation, and that is x prime equals x plus or minus vt. Y prime equals y, z prime equals z, and t prime equals t. So those are his laws of motion and what he put forth. Now, along comes Lorentz, and now they're trying to figure out what is really this Earth made of. We now realize that there are molecules, and within molecules there are atoms that form the molecules. Now, within the atoms, we have now where we have protons and neutrons and electrons. And you have the Bohr model, where the electron is like a planet circling the sun. Most of the mass is in the nucleus, and there's considerable distance between the nucleus and the electron. And Lorentz figured that the electron being negative charge and the proton positive charge, that maybe the nucleus, all matter, are of one little particle, and that of an electron. So he was looking at matter and the universe as particles and trying to formulate how to express that as valid mathematically, and then say, this is what I think the universe is. These particles expressed through mathematical, the language of physics. And so he put forth what's called the Lorentz transformation equations, which are x prime equals x minus vt, that over the square root of 1 minus v squared over c squared, where c is the velocity of light. Now, my prime equals y, z prime equals c. T prime, he came up with the dilation, and where, Henry Poincare put it in this form. He worked over what his work was and put it in this form where you have like the four equations of the Lorentz. T prime equals t minus v over c squared. This quantity, t prime minus the quantity v over c squared times x. That over the square root of 1 minus v squared over c squared. Now, he just had that, and along comes where they're saying there's contraction. As somebody, as you go faster towards the speed of light, you get a contraction. A meter is not a meter, it's less. So he said, well, maybe as a temporary explanation, maybe we can use my formulas where it shows you will obtain a contraction for distance comparing the v squared over c squared in the square root 1 minus that. And, well, a lot of them were saying, yeah, okay, that's what we'll do. But how do you still explain the wave? You have to have a medium. So the literature and everybody was still teaching that there was a medium, because you have to have a medium for sound waves. You say, well, you have to have a medium for light waves. And but they couldn't find any medium. In the Michelson-Morley precise experiments, there was no detection of any aether, any medium. So more and more we're saying, well, if you can't find it, maybe there isn't any. Now, Einstein, looking to obtain a position as a professor, jumped on that and says, and got backing, where it was printed in, I think, an Annalen der Physics, Annals of Physics, that disregard the medium. It goes through space, and space is a void. Planck had showed that you get radiation in the vicinity of going from iron to white iron to liquid to where it splashes out. You can see that, to the light waves that come out of it in its vicinity. And without any ether and anything to, for Galileo, it goes out inertia and won't stop unless acted upon by an exterior force. Well, it's out in the void and it goes out into space. And so they pushed him. But the thing is, he didn't originate that. Henry Poincare put forward relativity, at the St. Louis World's Fair where all of the best scientists gathered, and he gave the key speech, and the topic was relativity. All relativity, of course, special relativity, and going through Lorenz's equations and explaining that, explaining contraction, explaining time dilation with examples, and he had written books, you see. At the time, Olinto de Preto put forward E equals mv squared, and they lived by each other. And Michael Basso, Olinto de Preto's cousin, helped Einstein work with him at the patent office. So they showed him de Preto's work and the transformation of a little mass into an enormous amount of energy. And he used E equals mv squared. And that's what Einstein used in his original papers, because he stole from de Petro the actual work. They showed it to him. But Einstein never would admit that. And so they built Einstein up then. I always backed him as a personal friend, especially for E equals mc squared, E equals mv squared equals mc squared, till I find out by an Italian Cultural Society the article that proved, that definitely indicated, and then I researched, and I have maybe the best proof now, that Einstein stole the work from de Petro. So Einstein is the greatest plagiarist. Now, so Poincare put forth those equations and explained them, relativity, and along comes yours truly, and I want to get out from the horrendous experiments on my brother and I by Hoover and on others. And he didn't like Einstein. Einstein was out. So if I could understand Einstein's work and get with him, and I would be out of the Hoover criminally insane crimes. So I started studying his work, and after the first few pages, I realized Einstein didn't really know what he was talking about when he talked about subjects in the discipline of theology. In cosmology, which is how the universe was formed and how it functions, all he knew was that the universe was our Milky Way. He looked at it, and we saw our Milky Way, and said, that's our universe. They had to give him special crash courses by cosmologists here in the U.S., in my area here, where they took him and let him look in a telescope at the universe. Crash courses about the size and dimensions of space and the universe that everybody talks about, like he came up with the word space and knows everything about space in the universe. It's all built up in the hoopla and falsehood, fraud of Einstein. He then said that space and time are the same. Well, he said you had to be irrational in order to understand and put forth how this almost infinite universe, complex universe functions. And I says, no, I think rational man with 2 feet on the ground rationally represents what is occurring and what is valid, and that would hold. So I immediately, philosophically, didn't agree with him. Now let's get this mathematical physics. He violates Galileo's universal law of the addition or subtraction of component velocities by saying that wherever you are, you take light, and it's the ultimate velocity in the universe. Who can decree what is the ultimate velocity? So I had to say, I think he's wrong there. Then what he says is that that's the answer. Then he'll give a theoretical experiment or whatever, and when he comes up with it, it'll match that. When you put the way he does it, it will be that light is the ultimate velocity, so that's the answer. Well, now yours truly says, look, from what I can analyze and consider correct, they say what proved general relativity was that light bends towards a star. How does gravitational pull on light prove relative velocity? And wouldn't it alter its velocity, either maybe accelerating it as it got closer to the star, or causing it to bend and it might decelerate a little bit? Isn't that correct? So I said, all that experiment proves is that light must have mass. What they are calling zero mass must have mass. Is there proof? Of course. Compton proved that when you hit with a photon, he says it transfers all to momentum. Well, by definition, momentum is rho, the Greek letter R, not I use P because it's a P. The Greek letter rho equals mvr if it's angular velocity. If you set R to unity to get it, say, linear, then you have rho equals mv. And it's wise to do that because yours truly says, look, my rho prime equals m prime v prime r. We set R to unity. Now, in the laboratory, and this is how I explained it to Einstein, you take your book of relativity, I did it polite, and you put it at the point of a fulcrum, and you hit it with a photon, and your book falls. And you say, well, of course, there's momentum, it hit the book, it was on such a precise fulcrum, it fell. Now you take and put it back up on the point of fulcrum, and as you walk back and look, it falls. Well, you go, you haven't bombarded it yet with a photon, you go and pick it up, put it back on the point of a fulcrum, and it takes and falls again, and you put it, and it falls again, falls each time. What's causing it to fall? It's because I have bombarded it with what I call one of my finite particles. And I explain my philosophy of finite particles. The particles become less and less finer towards an infinitesimal particle. Now, if a laboratory has the result of your book of relativity falling, and my rho prime equals your rho, and my m prime equals your m, the answer has to be whether you measure it or see it, especially measure it, that my v prime has to be greater. So we now have breaking the light barrier. He says, are you sure? And I says, I've done that theoretical experiment at least 1,000 times. I come up with the same answer. I'm sure. So he thought a moment. He says, well, like when? I said, well, I think CERN actually now is getting increments of speed superluminous, but they're not announcing it. But I think by 1975 it'll be announced of breaking the light barrier, superluminous velocity. Now when I talked to him and said the Lorentz, out of politeness to the Lorentz-Einstein transformation, he would interrupt me and say, no, it's Lorentz's transformation equation. He not only agreed with me, he took his name off of what some were the Einstein transformation equations. But they're really Lorentz transformation equations. Do you understand? Now, so what are that's the second era. What's the third era? Is the Castellano era of mathematical physics. The capital C transformation equations. Capital X prime equals capital X plus or minus v squared over c squared, that all over the square root of 1 minus v squared over capital C squared, where capital C is equal to or greater than the velocity of light. So you incorporate Galileo and Lorentz and whoever, but now it's the modernization going into superluminous, breaking the light barrier in future theoretical mathematical physics, at least theoretical. And y prime equals y, z prime equals c, and the other ones, in the Lorentz, t prime equals t minus v over c squared x, t minus the quantity v over c squared x over the square root of 1 minus the quantity v squared over c squared. And I say you can't violate the universal law of the addition or subtraction of component velocities, and t prime is from your observation of man from the center line of the mass of the gravitational field he is in. And man is on the gravitational mass on the planet of the Earth. That's it. Man, rational man, 2 feet on the ground, goes by the center line, and time of the Earth. And now, so what about space-time? Well, look at it my way. If you go a light year, you can say, yeah, it's the time it takes light a year to travel through space. So you can say a light year distance, or a second, or a year, the time it takes for light to travel at its velocity. Yeah, you can say that. But you take and you read my capital C transformation equation. You just take and read that, and it takes you, say, a minute or a couple of minutes. You have it moved. What is time realistically, with you with 2 feet on the ground here on the planet Earth, time was the first time you read what the time was, and T prime is the second time, and that is an interlude, is time. Time is an interlude between one reading and the next reading, and it's therefore you don't have no distance involved at all. What is distance? Distance is when you go from, say, center line, t sub 0, t0, and you go along the x-axis, and at whatever time you read is a distance. So space is distance. Space is not time, and time is not distance. But space-time, make it sound so fast and and that's what it is. Now you keep 2 feet on the ground, and it's time is an interlude. Space is a distance. So that's what I have to mention as Doc C PhD company. And I gave that as my last lecture because now, disgusted by the plagiarism and forced robbery of my work, vast wealth by Hoover and Hoovers, and then I wanted to do it with man's greater challenge, the discipline of theology. How did we get here? Why are we here? What best to do? And I have videos answering that. And so has become and is my main interest. And along the way, in defending especially young ladies from being brutally attacked by anti-religious wackos, they were calling me preacher, and I said, well, the early founding fathers of St. Peter was married. The first pope was married. And so he said I couldn't be a priest. Well, I'll be a preacher of universal pure, not that we're purer than anyone else. We have the clearest, the purest comprehension, explanation, and presentation of Christ on earth. If you're a believer. If you're not a believer, it is very, very tough to discount the size, infinite universe and its vastness, and what goes on as to is there a real God, and how come such crimes like genocide could go on without God interfering this. You see, it's very tough. So there's the two schools of thought. Those who say, there is no divine God, and those who say, look, Christ was here and gave blind people sight on command. Proven. He raised at least 3 people from the dead. Absolutely proven. So you decide what you want to believe in or not believe in, but the facts of theoretical mathematical physics are as I present them. The U.S.A. must give me honors and some of my vast wealth that was forcibly stolen from me back to me. I need it. I'm elderly, injured, and need this for my health and to protect my family because they practice genocide. The fiends attack your family, figuring you'll cave in because, look, and that's what they're doing and keep doing right now. And that's what revolt I have to sit and revolt against their revolting crimes and quagmire. They have the U.S. and the laws of God, man, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and civil rights. And of course, pardon me, I'm only human, not more or less than a human, rushing around. I only did that as soon as I get it done. Use the Enrico Fermi system. As soon as I get it done, I start putting it on, because there's only 24 hours in a day. And I've been going, I think, about 36 hours straight now. And I say to all of you that obviously I'm telling the truth. Willing to take a polygraph test on any editor's desk in front of whoever. One stipulation: they must print the results. I can't get that. They cancel out. So I say, anyone who helps or wants to help, please do. I highly appreciate, because it's my honors and your honors. Anyone who helped me and will, and it's my money and your money. Really, it's quite a bit of wealth. And I say, of course, then I thank you.